What do you mean by waterfall?
So, yeah. This has been a really big straw man for a lot of people to take pokes at, and rightly so, because it was somewhat mismanaged. I mean, everyone loves to talk about who's researched this for a while. To go back to Walter Royce, I think his name was, in 1970, presented his first paper. He didn't even call it waterfall, but had the diagrams of requirements leading to design leading to thing, in sort of a stepped format, and how he in his paper said, this is conceptually good, but if you try this in practice, you're probably going to screw up. Right? It had certain defects. You have to iterate through multiple parts different times, all this kind of stuff. But it really matches the intellectual phases. And I didn't talk about this webinar, but when you think about anything creative, you have to go through 3 intellectual phases. You just have to. You have to first discover what it is. Then you have to figure out how you're going to deal with it. And then you execute it. The example I love to use is if you walk into a kitchen, your hands just don't start making food and going, my hands are preparing food. I have no idea what they're doing. Why are they doing that? Right? The moment you walk in the kitchen, you're thinking, I want a snack. I'm hungry. I need to make a meal for my family. You're already doing the discovery piece. That happens automatically. And then you think, okay, given I'm hungry, what am I going to do about it? You start coming up with a plan, an implementation. How are you going to solve this? An invention. And then you actually have to make it happen. And you can't skip one of those steps. If you try to skip it, your brain will start filling in that gap by making stuff up. The waterfall method makes that explicit. You can't have code unless there's a design of some kind. You don't have to design of some kind unless you have requirements. Now, where did that requirement or that design come from? Who knows? Often we just make it up at the time we're coding, right? And this is actually what extreme programming was kind of going at, saying, we're not going to get good requirements. The design's not really that good yet. So let's just code and learn as we do it, because our brains will force us to do design and requirements as we code, because you can't not do it. Right, so if waterfall makes that very explicit. And so now that you have this idea that it matches the intellectual profile, then you can start saying, okay, what variations on that theme can you have? We can try to do all the discovery, get all the requirements, then all the design, all the invention, all the implementation. That's how a lot of people read it. But you can also do bits of requirements, bits of design, bits of implementation. So you have this whole gradation of ways you can do that. All it's saying is clearly, we're going to do some form of discovery before we do some form or amount of invention, before we do some form or amount of implementation. We're going to make sure we maintain that.
Also sounds agile.
Interesting. But Agile, basically, one of the things Agile, I think, does, it says, you know what? We don't think we're good at discovery. We think we suck at discovery. So in order to do it, instead of trying to do it up front at all, we're just going to punt on that puppy. And we're going to try to solve it all with code, showing to someone, and then doing discovery. We're going to do invention, implementation, then discovery. Right?
Interesting, because that's not the way that I think about it at all, right? I think about the refining up front as the discovery phase, and the phase that also helps you think about what you need to be doing from an invention perspective before you actually go take that work into, say, a sprint or onto your Kanban board and actually do the coding, right? I always say what you don't want to do is just go in and hack a bunch of code. You want to actually think you understand. Now, I think Agile does a nice job of saying, even when we think we fully understand, we might be wrong. And so we're going to do our best to fully understand it. We're going to believe that we understand the requirements. We're going to believe we understand the user need. We're going to build it, but then we're going to show it to you, dear stakeholder, to make sure that what I heard you say and what you meant were actually the same thing, because we're human. And often we ask for things and maybe we're unclear, or we ask for something, but we asked for a solution and we didn't actually understand our need, and we see the solution and we go, that's not what I wanted.
Right. And but see, I think what you're talking about, Jenny, is some things that reasonably good people have added on to Agile, as opposed to Agile defining itself that way. The Scrum guide just says the product owner creates a product backlog. How it comes into being is nowhere mentioned, nowhere about understanding it, nowhere really about doing a good job on it. It just says create it, and then you start working it in chunks of stuff. smart people like you and me, I hope, and other smart people are going, you know what, we should do a pretty good job. The better job we do on that backlog thing, probably the better off we're going to be, rather than just letting any old thing fly in there and be an order taker. Yep. But I think that's something we've had to add on from our waterfall experience, knowing that getting that stuff right up front saves us a lot of time, suffering, and pain downstream. I don't think it was part of the default Agile. In fact, I really think Agile...